Hello, 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 VUB colleagues. In this video, I'm going to be covering MLA and APA formats, two formats that you are bound to see your first year of college and will come up again and again during your college experience. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get onto the presentation that I made for you. And hopefully this will be helpful for you. So MLA and APA formatting, a few things to know. Why do we have different kinds of formatting? Well, one reason is you want to have uniformity among, the fields, and each field will have its own sort of standard of uniformity. And what this does is level the playing field. My judgment won't be clouded by your comic font or your curly Q font or your pink font or whatever it is that will give you an individualized presentation of your paper. No, we want all of the papers to look the same, all of the publications in certain fields to look the same. So we're just judging an author by their their product, their writing, and their research, not by the aesthetics of it. Proper formatting increases your credibility. So I can find your sources right away. I can see that who you're citing, who you were getting ideas from, and all of that. And consistency, right? So if I am a history buff, I expect to open all of these history journals, all of this academic research in history, and have all of the research look the same. It allows me to do my job faster if things aren't changing places all the time on me. So formatting is important. A little history. In our in-person class, I'll go through this in depth. But when these associations, Modern Language Association and American Psychological Association, MLA and APA, were developing, it was during the Industrial Revolution, kind of just right after it. And so people were seeing what happened with the development of unions, and people were wondering, how do we make professional organizations so that we control our careers, we control our profession, because a union sort of top-down management. And we literally had people calling themselves pharmacists, pedaling around their horse-drawn buggies, selling snake oil. So we needed to say, hey, okay, in certain fields, there are these standards, right? This is how we treat this, right? In English, this is when we use a comma. In pharmacy, this is how we do or do not use snake oil, right? In medicine, these are the rights by which we, the processes through which we go to get our hands on a cadaver in a legal and ethical manner. All sorts of these decisions were being made just post Industrial Revolution era. And so this is what was happening. And we were also solidifying our identity apart from the UK, right? And as one united nation, not the North and the South. So just really tumultuous time. And we're finding our identities. We're finding our identities nationally as laborers, as professionals, and navigating a completely new economy as well. So a little background there. So the two most popular formats that you'll see in college are MLA and APA. And briefly, this is what they stand for. So the MLA, you've got language scholars. APA, you've got social psychologists. MLA and APA are both professional organizations. So when we say professional, this means self-governing. So if you're an MD, you're in charge of saying, what the best procedure for doing a certain surgery is, right? And that's what professionals do. We dictate our own careers and standards. In MLA, we want to see all the information about an author, including their first name. And in APA, we're more concerned with the year in which the research was conducted. This is a sample citation. So if you were to quote from this essay, this is what you would have in your works cited page at the end. For APA, this is what you would have. So the main differences that I want you to see, comparing, is that in MLA, we've got the first name of the author. In APA, we don't. And that's really because APA focuses on eliminating sexism and genderism in research. So uh, doing that. The year is very important in APA. If you don't care about the year in APA, you could actually cite a famous scientist from Harvard from the 1920s explaining why whites are inherently smarter than blacks. Obviously, today, if you were to cite that, you'd look like a total nincompoop, and rightfully so, because everything gets outdated really fast in social science. Whereas in English literature research, you could completely cite something from 1924 and it might be just as valid today as it was back then. And so then just other minor differences are noted here in the way you're handling the journal edition numbers, page numbers, pretty similar there. The way they treat references, this is what your whole page of references will look like at the end of your essay in MLA. So to start with, you've got your last name and page number at the top. It says works cited. And then this is what we call a hanging indentation. I can teach you how to use Microsoft Word to do it for you. So this formatting isn't that big of a deal. No extra spacing between entries, it says, no extra spacing under the title, and then it gives you different examples of how you would cite something from a web page versus a book or an article, so pretty helpful. This is what it would look like in APA. So this is Psychological Association. It's going to call it references instead of works cited. You're going to have first names and middle initials all abbreviated. The year is always the very second piece of data that we want to see. And interestingly, AP is not capitalizing the nouns and adjectives and titles the way MLA does. So I tend to publish more in APA style, and you'll see that I do title things like this quite frequently. And that's just, again, because they want to eliminate the sort of like favoritism among certain types of words. And so you've got this information on the left. You again have examples of these are mostly journal articles, and we can talk more in person about these differences. Uh, so last thing I want to say on this slide is I have been told and followed this rule for a long time that this references is sort of like a subtitle that should be in bold in an APA paper, but check with your teacher. So these guidelines change every few years. And so, for example, in MLA, just recently, we said you don't need to put the web page for something you found online because we know that URLs die. There are lots of teachers who still think you should put the web page. I think this is sort of similar with APA, so just check with your teacher on these little details. So with what your paper will look like in MLA, you will not have a title page. With APA, you will. And so these are just side-by-side shots to compare. So in MLA, it's sort of strange for students to think, wow, I really just have my name, teacher's name, class name, date, boom, I'm straight in my paper. There's no extra space between the title and where your paper starts. In APA, we don't have the family name. We have the title of the paper as a running head. And then we've got the paper title, author's affiliation. Sometimes there's even more information on the title page, and then you go into other parts of the paper. So different ways of looking at it. And back to this, what I've been told to justify this actually that makes sense is APA again wants to read your research without social stigma, genderism, sexism, things like that clouding your reading experience. So if you can just look at the title page, and then flip the page, and then you're not constantly confronted with, look at, this is Kelly and Sarah and Eric and they're from these, universities. You're just, once you open that paper and you're reading it, you're not focusing on who wrote it, you're really just trying to focus on the information they're presenting. Whereas with MLA style, with your family name, at the top right corner of every piece of paper, you could see how someone with a particularly different, sort of minority family name could be at a disadvantage as far as being believable, credible by people who are discriminatory. So as far as voice, we will have a whole presentation on voice alone, but MLA does not use first person I, me, or my, and so this leads to what is more passive and definitely more wordy, definitely longer articles coming at you from MLA format journals. And so the example that I give you here is that you could have a thesis statement in MLA format here in bold, say something like, this study was designed to provide more information about the benefits and consequences of recreational snowmobiling in Yellowstone National Park to inform Yellowstone National Park officials during their policy making processes. Okay, if we were to have the same introduction, and I'll let you read this on your own at a different time, this thesis statement uh, using first person in APA format would be much different. So APA format acknowledges, the human aspect to research and writing, and uses I, me, my, and we, prefers active voice and prefers to be less wordy, more succinct. So we would have something instead that says, we sought to develop a study that would provide more information about the benefits and consequences. So, definitely more direct, a little leaner on the word count, and that's APA format. So a major difference you'll see between MLA and APA are the way in which they handle quotes. So in MLA, we use many direct quotes. That is to say, you'll see lots of words in between quote marks and citations all over the page. In APA, we like to allow the reader to read without being interrupted by outside ideas as often as possible. So you'll see more paraphrasing in APA with citations. Very important to note, you never paraphrase without giving attribution to the source. So in MLA, we might have something like, she said, quote, I prefer strawberry smoothies over banana smoothies, but I know I need the banana for extra potassium, end quote. And then you'd have that citation, that's MLA format, and then the closing period. In a longer quote, we say something longer than 4 lines would be treated as a block quote, and you can look into that. We could talk about it as a later date. Nobody's going to be using that much quoting here, their essay for this class. In APA, we get a little more direct because we're paraphrasing. So she preferred strawberry smoothies, but also drank banana smoothies for the potassium. The idea is the same, but I have taken out the direct quote, and then I've put the citation with the year at the end. So hopefully that'll show you a big difference between the two formats. So the differences are not just in the way they look, but it's really in a style of writing, and it has to do with the underlying function of the association that made the formatting. And that's, what I really want you to take away from this. Okay, so footnotes, MLA doesn't really use them. APA, we use them a lot because it allows you to kind of say something as a side note and move on very quickly. So you can see here in MLA, we've got the same idea with the direct quote. And now look how short I can make the same idea if I throw in a footnote. So she preferred strawberry but drank banana smoothies for the added potassium. It's the same idea, but I've really almost cut my word count in half. I threw in a footnote that says, hey, I interviewed this person, and so if you want to check my source, go right ahead. There's no need to do a direct quote. especially when what this person was saying isn't that riveting, right? So it's more just the fact that I know why this person drank banana smoothies, and I'm going to show you that it came from a credible source, but the words themselves that she used to express this idea weren't critical. So, by now, you might be thinking, this is going to give me a big headache. And a lot of students act like that. But what I want to just remind you of is that it's about credibility, consistency, uniformity, a level playing field. At the bottom line, it's about respecting the profession that made the formatting. So it's not about giving you a headache, and it's not about memorizing any of this for a test. Um, Instructors, we don't do that. So I'm going to give you a few rules here to try to make your lives easier. Rule number one is don't memorize the formatting. I don't memorize them. Most of my colleagues don't memorize them. Anytime we're looking to do a really solid works cited page or references page, bibliography, we're going to the source and we're looking at the journal or the style guide and making sure we're doing everything by the book. Rule number two, try to just appreciate the professional differences and why citations and quotations are treated differently. That's the main point, right? Is that if you understand, you know, uh, in American Medical Association, why you're seeing so many footnotes and so many footnotes that are really long. It's because, there's a certain jargon that the reader of these journals, they're expected to understand. At the same time, they've got to explain some of the really, really technical terms in case someone from a different field is reading this for research. So they've got to balance that, right? In MLA, it's an association based on language, and they love language and they value words, and they're not intimidated by really long, wordy articles. So yeah, you're going to see wordier pieces in MLA format. Rule number three, always defer to your instructor's preferences. I cannot say this enough. Um, I have published myself, and I have published in journals that look as though they're using APA format, and when push comes to shove, it's a little different. And they'll actually just recommend to authors, look at previous editions of our journal and copy that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so if your instructor wants the web page, even though you know the new MLA doesn't require it, fine. If your instructor wants a certain part in bold or a little, single space here, double space there, get used to it, okay? Because the whole idea is that you, as a student, can follow a set of guidelines, and that's all it is too. And often this will make the difference between an A and a B. So why wouldn't you just play nicely, format it the way they want to read it? Rule number four, check formatting and edit citations. So this goes back to the grade difference. This is often accounting for at least 10% of your grade. If you knew that you could get 10% more just by having your name in the right place, the page number in the right place, I mean, who wouldn't do this, right? So pay attention to it. And rule number five, always do it first. I'm so frustrated that I didn't learn this until I was working on my master's in English. I had a teacher who said, what kind of a dummy tries to do the citations after they're exhausted from writing? And I thought, oh, I don't, it wouldn't be me. So she really taught me to, as I write, if I quote from a source, I stop everything. I go to my works cited or my references or my bibliography, and I put the source in right there, trying to do as good of a job as I can to mind my formatting. I interrupt my writing process to cite that source. One, I remember the source more clearly and what idea came from it. Two, I'm less likely to get my sources lost or confused. Three, I have the energy to do it then because I'm actively writing then. So why not do it as I write? So you do your formatting first, you cite your sources as you write, and then your life will be so much easier. So in case you're wondering what we use when we're teaching, The vast majority of us go straight to this website called the Purdue Online Writing Lab, Purdue OWL. Very comprehensive, gives you more than guidelines to just MLA and APA, shows you examples, wonderful. Another thing that I love is University of Las Vegas Online Writing Lab. A little different, but it has a lot more PDF files and things that you can download and save and actually put in your binder to refer to. So I'm a big fan of that as well. And then YouTube. Nothing wrong at all with looking to YouTube for some advice, but I don't want you watching videos that show you how to do something incorrectly. So these are two videos, one on MLA, one on APA, and the individuals walk you through how to set up a Microsoft Word document with the proper formatting. So again, you're doing it first. You're writing a paper in MLA, and you're setting it up in MLA before you even start to write. And I hope that this was helpful, that you enjoyed it. You probably won't have any fun doing your own paper in MLA or APA format, but it just goes with the territory of college. And it really is just about respecting the profession, understanding a little bit of the history, leveling the playing field. And so I hope that this is helpful. And for the love of everything sacred, do not put two spaces after a period. There's no format that does that anymore at all. So I leave you with that. Thank you so much for watching, and I enjoy talking with you all about this, and sincerely hope that it helped you understand formatting.